Welcome. Can everyone hear me?
I can.
On behalf of the Art Committee and the Alliance, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Meet the Artist event. And it's wonderful to see art hung again in Daniel Hall after our 3-year hiatus for the COVID pandemic. It's very fitting that the first show features the work of Silver, a beloved long-term member of our own congregation. Silver, known in the art world as Mountain Woman Silver, has been a professional artist for more than 35 years. Her formal education includes a fine arts degree in studio arts and postgraduate study in graphic design. In her work, she uses a variety of materials and describes herself as an experimental mixed media artist. Her paintings, collages, and art quilts have been shown in several states, as well as in regional and national juried art shows. She's a member of the Oklahoma Art Guild, the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition, and the Paseo Art Association. The current show is intimately connected to this church. All the art pieces started as sketches which Silver created listening to sermons on Sunday mornings. And during the dark days of the pandemic, she was inspired to reproduce them on canvas. And with that, I'll hand over to Silver.
I was going to say my name is Silver, but I don't know. While I'm talking, I'm going to let Dawn pass out. I have 3 of my sketchbooks that I use on Sunday morning. I'm going to leave that half done and the rest are full. And I need welcome to come through them and see where they are. Where can you hear me? It's on.
Not like.
Okay, can you hear me now? Way in the back. The pages that have a little thing sticking out from them are actually in the art show. The pages that are coming into the thing. So I'll begin my formal statement here. Often I have been asked if I always knew I wanted to be an artist. The answer is no. I knew that I had been drawing as soon as I could hold a pencil, mostly faces. I knew that I was the one asked in 2nd grade to decorate all the blackboards with Christmas trees and Santas. I knew that in the 10th grade, I was paid $5 by a teacher to do a large pencil portrait. But in 1963, I did something never done by anybody in my family. I was the first to graduate from high school. I decided to go to college that fall. Did I major in art? No, not hardly. At that time, I had never had an art class, met an artist, or been in an art gallery or museum. The only art I'd ever seen were pretty pictures in a book I read. So I started college majoring in business. I could already type 70 words a minute and was working part-time as a typist to put myself through school. So the courses I took were shorthand, accounting, marketing. By the end of my first 2 years, I was bored. I was sketching my way through most classes and not retaining anything I heard in the lectures. After some counseling, I learned that I'm primarily a visual and tactile learner. If I were to graduate and remember anything I took, I needed a more hands-on course of study. At the beginning of my junior year, I started over, this time in painting and sculpture. I had no interest in teaching, just doing, so I went 4 more years, taking every art class that was offered. In art school, I was taught in a classical method with primary focus on hours of life drawing and art history before one could advance into actual painting and sculpture. You had to master anatomy. The women were encouraged to remain single if they were serious about being an artist. The men were advised to find a wife who had a well-paying career or were willing to devote themselves to furthering the man's artistic work. Sadly, I did not heed this advice and was married in my last semester of college. I graduated in 1969 and went to work for the state of Louisiana to put my husband through graduate school. There was little time or energy for art as I worked 8 hours a day and commuted on a New Orleans bus an hour each way. Soon, my husband was also working for the state, and we had a son. In spite of my lovely degree in studio arts, I filled my time with job and being a wife and a mother. When I expressed the wish to paint, my husband would say, "Be realistic. Just who do you think you are?" And I would not paint. We were divorced in 1977. I did do lots of people sketches during endless meetings demanded by my job. From 1977 to 1989, I painted when I had time or energy while holding down a state job in social services and raising my son. I joined the Baton Rouge Unitarian Church in 1985 and started sketching in church. Usually faces. I call these sketches View from the Pew. I wanted to have a show, but I never did get around to it before we left Louisiana in 1989. My life changed drastically when my husband, Tom Barker, moved from Indiana down to Louisiana in 1987. He joined our church and we became friends in the choir. We started dating in 1988, and eventually I showed him the art I kept stored away in a closet. I was doing some fairly strange symbolistic work in pastel, and those paintings are still a part of my house and have never been shown anywhere. I guess he is a little strange as I am because he liked what I was doing. Eventually, he persuaded me that we should share our lives, although both of us were gun shy at the thought of marriage. In 1989, we moved from Louisiana to Golden, Colorado, and I was able to focus totally on making art. 20 years after graduation from college, I began the real efforts at being a professional artist. Since 1989, we have lived in Colorado, Tennessee, Texas, and Oklahoma, always moving for Tom's work. We were finally married on January 1st, 1992. I'm going to add here, everywhere we lived, I would feel like I was starting over. You know, I would get to know artists, I would join groups, I would compete in shows, I would start to show my work, and after 2 or 3 years, we would move. And we'd go to another state and I'd start over again. It's a real lesson. Now I'm going to discuss the art a little bit. Although there are many styles of art, I think there are only really 2 types: art that is motivated from within the artist and art motivated from outside the artist. I have done both types. From 1982 to 2012, I was focused on outward motivation, how to make money as an artist. I did portraits at street fairs, and by commission, I worked for a minimum wage job for a graphic designer doing all the grunt work. This was before computers. I did ads for a large furniture store. Then I did that for the same thing for a newspaper. And sometimes I tried to paint something dictated by a buyer, such as a portrait of his house or his dog or a personalized still life. For 11 years, I did art grids and sometimes took commissions for those. Since 2012, I have gone totally to non-objective abstraction, art that comes from within me. I make no plans or demands, I just paint. It is what it is. Many of you are familiar with the Russian painter Kandinsky. Much of his later work dealt with the relationship he saw between music and painting. He visualized music as colors. He went through, certain sounds he heard made him paint blue or yellow or red or whatever. I began painting to music in 2012. For me, it was not about colors. I found that different instruments in classical music, and I have to only listen to music that I don't know any words to, because if I'm listening to music that have lyrics, my left brain takes over and I sing along. So I only listen to classical music that I don't know any words to. I found that different instruments in classical music evoke certain shapes on my canvas. For instance, I often see percussion music, especially the drums, as dark, heavy, bolder type shapes. Piano music in the higher notes make me paint droplets or dots or tiny circles. Violin music is often depicted as thin lines, sometimes single, but often multiple parallel lines. Cello music creates large, soft mountain shapes. When I think of cello music, I think of the Smoky Mountains where we lived in Tennessee for a few years. Indian flute music and the sounds of some of the wind instruments are impossible for me to paint. They are like smoke or wispy clouds that dissipate before a shape is distinguishable. When I'm adding detail, sometimes after I've painted all the shapes, I will go in and do detail in ink. And that's when I play Indian flute music. It doesn't distract me from doing these lines. I just call it meditating. I've learned that I can't stand the clashing of cymbals or any other sharp, loud noises. All they do is evoke violence, lots of slashing and stabbing brushstrokes. In this current series, the creativity is evident only with the sketches, and that's in these books that are going in. I don't know, has everybody got a chance to look at them? I think there's some these are done during church. Whenever there's a long stretch of talking, I have to stay awake. And so, or I'd be fidgeting everywhere. And so I began to just do doodles, and out of the doodles has come there. I love the patterns and the shapes that come out in this quiet meditating period. I wanted to share them in an exhibit, but the actual process of getting them drawn on canvas and finished required precise planning. This method is not how my intuitive painting works. I have never been a natural paint inside the lines kind of person. The best thing in creating this series is that it got me through the pandemic. In 2021, once the Paseo accepted my exhibit proposal, I had to get up, go to the studio, and do these very concentrated, deliberate paintings. My new series will use some of the 100 sketches or so I have made, but thankfully, my process will be different. For me, the new work will be in color. And two, I don't intend to paint within the lines. Are there any questions?
Is it, when you reproduce these to canvas, is it all freehand?
No, I used to use a grid. Do a grid over a drawing. This is a old, very hundreds of years old. I would do a grid over the picture or the drawing I had done. These little ones that are in these books. And then I would do a grid on a canvas and then it's drawing within those things. I learned a few years ago. Tom gave me for Christmas an overhead projector. And so what I do is I photograph, it's pretty tedious. I photograph the photographs that are in my little books and I square them up using Adobe Photoshop. Because they're, when you take a picture, it's skewed, So I get this corner squared up and it's in Adobe Photoshop and I save it. And then I put a clear transparency into the printer. and I print this onto that. And then I can use the overhead projector to put it up. Now, if you're looking at the pictures that are actually marked in these books, you will notice that some of these paintings are reversed from what they were when I drew them. And it's because when I put them on the overhead projector, I didn't notice that they was facing the wrong way. But I mean, once I've gone through the thing of getting it onto the canvas, it's pretty hard to change it. Another thing is all of the drawings that I transfer to the canvas are just a jumping off place. If when it gets up there on the wall, it doesn't quite look right in the design, the composition, I'll change it. You know, I'll add things. I change all of the drawings are just in black and white. But you may notice some of these things have color. They're very grayed in some areas. So I just whatever it calls for, I do it. And actually, I like it when it varies a little bit because it lets me know I'm still creating up there on this thing. It's not just painting with everything.
I noticed that some of your paintings have what looks like maybe copper or something. What is that paint? What are you using?
I'm using metallic acrylic paint. It gives that metal look. I use silver, I use gold, I use copper.
We had, Reverend Diana. And, Susan Bishop and I were moving all the chairs around. And these were all, okay. Reverend Diana. The two square ones there, those are her favorite. And why it was her favorite, yes, is it really kind of included what she was saying at church.
Well, the title, all of the titles here are the names of sermons.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, I didn't necessarily do that particular drawing with a sermon title. After I got all these, I didn't name them.
Yeah.
And that was
Those four are her favorites.
Is that right?
Yeah, she loves them.
She did that sermon, I believe, when she first came here.
Yes.
In 2018, we had our first art show, and I was the first one who was in that. And she preached that sermon, the cactus of love. And that's what it is. Any more questions?
I was going to ask if the color has any relationship to the music as the shapes do. Or do you just think this needs something different, this needs something extra?
I don't, for me, the color is so intuitive. And often the shapes don't come until after I've made them. I mean, I don't think about things beforehand, I just do. Back when I was starting to do this kind of work, and I did a show in 2014, I was on television on that show, Is This a Great State? And Galen Culver came to my studio and he filmed me for 2 hours. He had, I had laid out a blank canvas and I had lots of paint, you know, and I had very limited palette, maybe 6 colors in black and white. And he was running around filming me and I'm painting that picture right in front of him. And I'm not trying to think about what I'm doing, I'm just doing it. And he's filming all that. And it was really a great experience. But having when you're painting, having somebody with a little camera in his hand right here, looking up at your double chin. But he did a great job. And for 2.5 hours he did this. He went to the studio or the gallery where I was having a show and doing some of that and interviewed me. And then on television, it was about a 2.5 minute clip. Or is this a great state or what? I know. A lot of editing.
We did a series that was all done from music. Play, last one, mostly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of coloring and so on. This is about.
Well, that was the show that Haley Potter, did. And, what happened with that, and y'all might have heard it when I did the last show. Tom had a heart attack in late 2011, and I was a caregiver for the next 9 months. And I just then got back into the studio, and I just couldn't get started. I tried and tried and tried, and nothing was working. So one day he comes in and he brings in 2 tapes, 2 CDs, the best of Tchaikovsky. And I never did that before, and I plugged them in, and it was just like energy flowing into me. And I began to paint to those things. And so out of that, for the next year and a half or so, I did these very colorful, very abstract paintings. And they were all done to the same 2 CDs. I just played it over and over and over. Yeah, I owe that to Tom.
You have the ability to draw, wonderful portraits and stuff. Have you thought about getting back into that?
Some, but, my eyes, I'm legally blind in my right eye. I have no perspective. I mean, it doesn't go out there and form a point. This eye makes things look small, and this eye makes things look large. And as Joan will attest, when we were hanging the show, they will never trust me to get the thing straight because even the cards, I can't make them straight. So when I try to do a portrait, I mean, I'm looking at you, Joan, and your left eye is up higher than your right eye. It looks like it to me. Maybe, but I don't know. The only way I would do a portrait, I think, would be to take a photograph of a person and then use that over, outline and get the eyes lined up right. Because I can't do it naturally. My eyes just don't see that way anymore. And I'm always afraid that when I do a portrait, really truly, maybe the eyes are like that, and the mouth's up like that, and the shoulders up like that. Yeah. So the last, I did a series in 2013, 2011 of faces, and they were all every kind of color in the world, not naturalistically, and they were very distorted. And that way I can say I clean. That's how it's supposed to be, because that's how I did it. I didn't know it. Some of them were real people, but
you talked about it just being your reaction to the music and just making these shapes and everything. But after the fact, and I'm looking at this one in particular, it's my favorite, I think.
which one of the big ones?
The one, well, to me, the one with the bird with his beak down there eating those little round things. And the letter.
This?
Yeah.
It's got a bird.
So, so you don't see the beak of the bird.
No, where is it? Where is it?
I love the eye.
Where's the eye? I didn't know that.
I don't see a bird.
That's what I know. It's kind of what.
Really clearly, even though you didn't make a name for it to be. So this is the bird. This is his eye. And this is the beak. And it's gonna eat its round things. And here's the rock. Kind of round things. And then when I looked at it up close, there's actually colors. So here's the flowers in the garden. And here's the beak of either bird or Britain, I don't care which. It's one of the less expensive ones that I really like it. But the funny thing is, so you don't even see that?
Oh, and I don't image when I'm drawing. I'm just doing things. But it's like when I look at you, if I were doing a portrait of you, I don't look at you as Fran. That's why I don't need portraits. But if I were drawing you, I would look at the shapes, you know. Everything would be a shape. It wouldn't be, it would wind up looking like you, but it would just be shapes I put together. Including mask. I love this about this kind of work because everybody who looks at it sees something different. You know, I always say it's kind of like clouds. You look at a cloud and I see something, you see something. That it? All right.
Thank you.
Go.